Welcome to this video about waste minimization. As a barista, you will be constantly measuring milk, steaming milk, pulling espresso shots, operating the grinder, and more. You have to deal with many different types of drinks, different sizing, different ratios of foam to milk, and different combinations of drinks in larger orders. No matter what your current skill level is, you're most likely going to be constantly concerned about your wastage. If you constantly waste milk and espresso, then you are losing profit for your business. You're also losing time, which means making customers wait longer, which decreases the quality of your service and reputation. How exactly do you define wastage? Well, firstly, let's talk about margins. In the instance of milk, we need to steam slightly more milk than we think we need, so we have enough milk to entirely finish off the drink we are making. If we fall short by 20 mils, there's no way we can professionally steam up exactly 20 mils of milk using our steam wand on our coffee machine. The steam wand would blast that milk everywhere. We need to steam a minimum quantity of milk. This minimum quantity is the smallest amount of milk that we can steam in a controlled way from our coffee machine. Depending on the jug, this can vary from 150 mils to 300 mils. So going back to our original example, if we were short by 20 mils, then we would need to steam up another 150 mils of milk at the minimum, meaning that our wastage would be whatever is left from that secondary amount, which is about 130 mils. If we instead had slightly overestimated the milk we needed by 20 mils, our wastage would only be this 20 mils. Analysing this example yields two important observations over time. Number one, 130 mils of wastage per coffee adds up much faster than a wastage of 20 mils of milk per coffee. Number two, steaming a second jug requires filling a second jug with milk and steaming, which takes additional time and generates more mess, which takes up even more time. Therefore, a barista who observes a small safety margin of milk will save more money and make coffee much faster than a barista who tries to get exactly the right amount of milk for the coffee but falls short often. Some important tips that can help you out, especially when you're busy, include keeping a jug of freshly steamed milk for a couple of minutes before getting rid of that milk. This means that if you were to miscalculate and need a small bit of milk to top up, you have some freshly steamed milk right there that you can top up with, providing, of course, that it is the same type of milk. Alternatively, if you have the Uber milk system, this means that you can dispense just the right amount of hot milk straight into your drink, which also minimizes wastage. In the case of the first example, I would only keep this jug for a couple of minutes while I work on the next coffee order. After I finish that order, I would get rid of that milk and rinse the jug. Another tip I'm going to give new baristas is to always overestimate to begin with. You're going to have larger margins than someone with more experience than you. Over time, try to narrow this margin down to the point where you occasionally underfill a drink. It still happens to me. Sometimes I didn't quite generate enough froth, so the milk falls just a little bit short at the top. With practice, you're going to have a nice, small, consistent margin. A handy measurement to get you started here is to look at the bottom of the spout of the jug, where the spout connects to approximately the midway point. Always fill your jug to this point to begin with and experiment from here. If I told 3 different baristas to each fill a jug to 1 centimetre below the spout, I would get 3 different measurements. When you become more advanced, you'll firstly be using your eyes to judge if it's the right amount visually, and when you pick up the jug, you're going to be judging the weight of it. Sometimes it feels just a little bit lighter than I expect, so I'll fill it up slightly more. It's common to remeasure from time to time. So you put some milk in, you think it's okay when you look at it, but then you lift it up and you think, okay, I just need just a little bit more milk, otherwise I'm going to fall short. This video wouldn't be complete without a discussion on coffee grinding. There are many different models of grinder and ways of getting the right amount of coffee into your portafilter. The basic manual grinder has a hopper which feeds coffee beans into the grinding mechanism, which then empties into a chamber that we spin, emptying the grinds into the waiting portafilter below. The first thing to mention here is that coffee goes stale very quickly. It reacts with the air and noticeably changes the extraction properties after as little as 5 minutes. The first thing to then do is to only grind just enough coffee for the coffee that you are making. The most common mistake for junior baristas to make is to leave the grinder running and forget to turn it off. It's actually okay to leave the grinder running for a bit longer if you are doing a few coffees at a time, as you will likely be using all these coffee grinds within 5 minutes. It's not okay if you are only making one coffee, the business is quiet at the time, and you fill that grinding chamber all the way up to the top with coffee. That's a lot of wastage. So that's the first tip. Only activate the grinder for as long as necessary to get enough grinds for the drink that you're making. Secondly, you actually need to grind slightly more than you think you need due to the way that the coffee grinds fill the portafilter. They will fill the middle portion first, and they pile up from the middle before spreading to the edges. We want the loose coffee grinds to fill the entire basket of the portafilter right to the brim, to an even level amount, which means to do this, we need to overfill this portafilter as it tends to heap up in the middle. We then brush our finger, or perhaps the handle of a brush over the top, to spread the grinds from the middle out to the edges to make a nice flat surface. You can do this right over the bench and spread the excess coffee grinds onto your workstation, or you can brush it back into the chamber as shown in the video. This is only a small quantity of coffee, but I would argue it is far more advantageous to do this from a mess standpoint. Doing 100 extractions and wiping excess grinds directly onto your workstation will make it very messy very quickly, especially if you also handle chocolate powder, steam, and hot water there as well. If you brush these excess grinds back into the grinder, you're going to save some coffee grinds, but you're also going to keep them more contained, preventing mess from developing as quickly in the first place. This problem is handled effectively by more modern grinders. There are some grinders that grind a set weight of coffee beans that will be just enough to fill your basket. This will also reduce your wastage greatly. The model that I use in the video actually performs the tamping process at the same time as grinding for a set time to fill the basket. It is essentially a closed system with no way for spare grinds to fall out of the mechanism, as it is grinding and tamping at the same time. We only have a few grinds left over from the final process of wiping the lugs and sides of the basket from excess grinds that build up. So we've handled milk and we've handled the grinding process. To round off our discussion, let's talk a little bit about espresso shots. Now, each cafe and coffee machine may be different. The way we have set up our coffee machine is to perform a double ristretto extraction with the left button of the group, a double shot with a middle button, and the right button is simply a continuous pour button, which we don't really use in the process of making a coffee. To do a single shot, we simply put the cup/shot glass underneath a single spout, and we press the middle button of the group. This is going to dispense 60 mils of espresso, which is 30 mils from each spout. So to do a single shot, we use the double shot button. Firstly, let's assume that you are new to making coffee and you make one drink at a time. If you were to make 2 small lattes, doing one at a time, then you would use that middle button to dispense 30 mils from one of the spouts into the glass and discard the other 30 mils. Then you'd finish steaming the milk and pouring and go back to the second latte, doing another shot and having one spout over the second glass, discarding the other half. Obviously, you would minimize your wastage by simply putting one glass underneath each spout of the portafilter and get that 30 mils from each spout into each glass. So that's the difference between using one extraction, one puck of coffee, to 2 pucks of coffee. I suggest always collecting the spare shot into a shot glass, even if you only need one shot at that time. If you run into the situation of someone ordering another single shot drink straight after you've just made a single shot drink, then this spare shot of espresso could still be used for the second drink. Espresso degrades rapidly when it begins the extraction process, so I would only use this method firstly if the shot hasn't been sitting there for longer than 3 to 5 minutes, and secondly, only if that shot passed a visual test. When we do a visual test, we're looking at the crema portion of the extraction. If it still has a nice golden layer of crema, it's likely to still be suitable. If you have any doubts, simply do another shot and throw out that older shot. The world is not perfect, and there will be some degree of wastage. Alternatively, you can collect these shots into a bottle for doing iced latte or iced coffee. As these drinks are already served cold, and never rely on their crema being a distinct part of their taste. You can use coffee that has little to no crema. The shots will then be cooler as well, which is going to impact your iced drinks far less than fresh, hot espresso shots straight from your coffee machine. Especially if you are doing a small iced latte, it has a small quantity of cold milk, and this 30 mils of hot espresso going straight on the top is going to make it somewhat warm. And if it's a hot summer's day, the customers might appreciate a colder drink than that. As you become more skilled as a barista, you'll be looking to group single shot coffees together and do them at the same time. You are half thinking about being cost effective, but you're also half thinking about being time efficient. If you only had to spend the time to do one extraction rather than two separate extractions, you would be significantly faster and get those drinks out faster. I want to round this conversation off with a discussion of what not to do. It may be tempting to think of other ways to minimize your wastage, but you should never do this at the expense of the quality of your product. The first thing is to not use old shots with little crema as the foundation for your coffee. I demonstrate this in the video and attempt to do some latte art. I managed to do the tulip quite easily, but the coffee is more pale than the others I have made. The crema texture itself is patchy, and the taste is going to suffer. If ever in doubt, simply start again. Customers appreciate confidence and will prefer you starting again rather than standing there deliberating about putting an old shot into their drink and then you actually go through with it. Secondly, you may use a jug of freshly steamed milk to top up a drink that falls short of the top. If the jug is not freshly steamed, avoid the temptation of pouring this milk back into your other cold milk and reheating. This milk that has already been steamed once before will disrupt the quality of this untouched milk that is being poured back into. You will find it harder to get a good texture. Consistent froth and control will suffer during this process. Instead, put your effort into measuring the cold milk before steaming and focusing on this steaming process. This is going to automatically decrease your wastage, improve your quality, and improve your customer experience, which can only be good for your reputation, especially if you're there for the long run. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I appreciate your support. I hope I've been able to provide you with some more value. Please like this video if you found it informative, comment below, and subscribe for future content. See you in the next video.